Excellent. We are live to the world. So good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, and wherever you are in the world. I've got a very exciting guest today who I've been following for a number of years on his podcast, and I'm absolutely delighted today to have Roger Dooley on my podcast. So we're going to be talking about all things neuromarketing, neuroselling, the science of the brain, friction, brain influence, and so much more. So, Roger, you're absolutely welcome to the Global Sales Leader. And I'm your host, Jason Cooper. I'm a sales strategist, sales coach. I help to deliver better results by sales training coach. So this series is all about insightful leaders, insightful people that can actually deliver something exceptional and intriguing strategies to great success. And my guest today, without further ado, is Roger Dooley. So welcome.
Well, thanks for having me on, Jason. You know, I felt like somebody was following me, and now I finally know who that person is. So thanks for enlightening me, and I'll try and live up to that really bold introduction there.
I've read your books, actually. Well, I've read one of the books. I have another one to actually come, and I know you have a smaller version of it as well. So a little bit about you. So you're going to probably give a little bit of more of an animated version of you than my quick introduction, and I want to find out a lot more about what you do. So you're an author of an international keynote speaker. Your books include Friction, The Untapped Force That Can Be Your Most Powerful Advantage. That is awesome. That's one of the best books of 2019. When was 2019? I can't actually remember. That was ages ago.
Seems like about 5 years ago, doesn't it, Jason?
It feels like it. It feels like this year's a bit of a blur, but and your Brainfluence as well. 100 Ways to Persuade and Influence Consumers with Neuromarketing, and your Neuromarketing podcast as well. Column in the Forbes.com, and the founder of Dooley Direct, a consultancy co-founded College of Confidential, the leading college of bound website. Look, for the people actually watching this physically and the people that are in Audible, look, I'm actually looking to my second screen, so I'm reading off a little bit of the script. So, Roger, tell me about what got you started in this whole world of behavioral economics and sort of neuroscience and all of this wonderful stuff, which is fascinating, by the way. But what were sort of the anchor points along the way you went, bang, this is what I like to do?
Well, you know, you would be hard-pressed to predict this outcome from my early career, but there were a couple of seeds planted very early on. When I was in college, undergraduate school, studying engineering, I retained an interest in psychology. In fact, I minored in psychology, and also, oddly, found the field of advertising fascinating. And so when I was supposed to be in the library studying differential equations and organic chemistry, instead I would be reading Advertising Age. And I actually took a course in psychology of persuasion. And this was so long ago. This was pre-Robert Cialdini. So I had this little interest, but it really didn't take any root for decades, because I pursued a career first as an engineer, then as more of a manager executive, finally became the strategic planning director for a Fortune 1000 company when I was 30, which for me was a dream job. I was super excited by it. I mean, especially for a young guy, relatively young,
Still young now.
What better kind of job could you have than working with all these different business units and creating great plans? And but I chose that moment to bail out and become an entrepreneur. I co-founded a direct marketing business aimed at the earliest owners of home computers, just as home computers were really coming on the scene. And I've been an entrepreneur ever since. That business went on for over 10 years, morphed into more business-oriented directions, including an IT outsourcing and networking business, digital marketing businesses. I co-founded a college-oriented business. It's College Confidential, which became the go-to destination for college-bound students and parents in the U.S. and really around the world for students who want to study in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And I sold that to the Daily Mail Group. which brought me around to my current state. While I was working in College Confidential, I had the opportunity to work on a few other little projects, and I saw that neuroscience and marketing were coming together in this strange field called neuromarketing. And I was not the only person to see that. There were some early neuromarketing startups then, but I decided to do what any good digital marketer would do. So I bought a domain, neurosciencemarketing.com. Keyword domains were big back in those days, 15 years ago or so.
Yeah.
And began writing there not too long after that. And to my surprise, my writing got some traction. People were actually reading what I was writing about, and they were commenting and asking me stuff. And over time, that morphed from sort of a pure emphasis on neuromarketing and using tools like EEG or fMRI to gauge whether an ad was working or not. I mean, that's a great tool and discipline. But to me, it was sort of limiting, I found, because only big brands could afford neuromarketing studies in those early days. And I was getting feedback from a lot of folks who were entrepreneurs themselves or were smaller parts of big companies where they didn't have the big budgets. So I found that I was being pulled more in the direction of ideas that could be applied by any size organization, which brought me into the behavioral science space. It's really a continuum. If you can look at the brain from various ways, you can look at it as a neuroscientist might by peering inside and seeing what's going on. But you can also measure how people behave in the real world. And those aren't mutually exclusive things. To me, they're both equally applicable. Solving some kinds of problems, one approach will work better than another.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I've been doing ever since. My first book, Brainfluence, came out about 9 years ago now. It's in about a dozen languages. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from readers all over the world who've been able to apply its ideas. But there's been sort of a progression in my thinking. A few years after that came out, I developed a little framework I call the Persuasion Slide that could be used in a sales situation or in an online persuasion situation, getting people who are visiting your website to actually convert either into a lead or to a customer. I'm not going to get into the details of that.
That was my question actually in my head. How does that actually work? Because
I'll give you the very short version of it. I saw that behavioral designers like BJ Fogg had been thinking about this. BJ is famous for his Fogg behavior model. It says you need 3 things to create or change a behavior. And that behavior could be buying something. It could be forming a habit, lots of different things. He says you've got to have motivation, which is the person has to want to do the behavior or want the result of doing the behavior. I may not want to go on a diet, but I might want the result of going on a diet. There has to be ability, which is not too much effort, not too difficult to do, because if it's too difficult or impossible, they won't be able to do it. And then there has to be what he originally called a trigger and now calls a prompt, something to get the ball rolling. I thought this was a really powerful insight, as have many marketers and other behavioral scientists. He gets a lot of citations for his work on that. But I wanted to try translating that to incorporate the ideas in my book, Brainfluence, and of behavioral science in general, where how can we give marketers a framework and salespeople to use both conscious persuasion techniques and non-conscious persuasion techniques and put them into this kind of a framework. So the slide model is based on the children's playground slide, where gravity is what makes it work. With no gravity, obviously, a kid won't go anywhere. So in my framework, that represents the customer's motivation. That's what they're coming to you with. You're not creating that. They're coming to you with needs, wants, goals. Some of these are going to be conscious needs. I need a new car because my old car broke down or it's not reliable anymore. But some of them are going to be non-conscious needs. They may not even realize that part of that car buying purchase involves, what will my neighbors think when they see this in my driveway? What will people do will people think I'm more attractive and appealing because I'm driving this car? Will this signal something about me? The early buyers of the Toyota Prius paid thousands of dollars of premium for kind of a not sketchy technology, but it's something that would probably not fully recoup its cost over that time. But they were showing their neighbors that they were willing to spend those excess resources because saving the planet was important to them. So you've got the customer's motivation. That's part of it. And every customer has conscious, even B2B customers have non-conscious motivations. They want to know, what will my boss think of this? If this purchase goes south, what's that going to mean for my career? Am I going to get fired or perhaps passed over for promotion? There are a lot of things that they may not even articulate that are going on unconsciously.
So you're really tapping into the unconscious behavior of the buyer, the person actually wants to tap in. So it's the unconscious, then it's conscious behavior. How does that actually work within the realms of me wanting to buy a car, as an example, or me going out? Maybe I've seen a flurry of ads. Maybe my car breaks down. Maybe something else happens. But what actually happens after that?
Well, first, I think it's maybe just take one step back. And why is there a field called neuromarketing? Why did I write Brainfluence? According to Gerald Zaltman of Harvard, 95% of our brain's decision-making processes are non-conscious. Only 5% are conscious. So, often when we're selling or persuading, we're trying to explain to people why this is the logical choice. We're giving them the 5 most important reasons why you should do what I'm asking you to do, and so on. When you're doing that, you're really only addressing a small part of their decision-making. And in fact, Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in behavioral economics, divides our thinking processes into system 1 and system 2. And system 1 is largely non-conscious. It's automatic, it's emotional, it's rule-based. When you go to the supermarket, probably 9 out of 10, or maybe even 95 out of 100 decisions you make are done by system 1. That's the brand I bought last time. Yeah, this is work. Oh, hey, that's on sale. You're not thinking about it. You're not analyzing it. And then you get to the one where, wow, I'm trying to cut down on my carbs. So you're looking at 4 different brands and reading the labels. That's system 2 thinking. But what Kahneman found was that people don't like to be in system 2. It's an uncomfortable way of thinking for them. It's energy inefficient. And so they try and get out of it. When you're trying to persuade a customer with all the facts and figures and logical arguments, you are pushing them into that system 2 thinking. So that is the origin of why we want to think about the customer's non-conscious motivations and how to appeal to those non-conscious motivations, because that's where most of the decision making is taking place. And clearly, it varies by product. If you are selling fragrances, for example, you're not going to do a lot of conscious marketing. You're not going to give people, we've got 37% more essential oils in our perfume than the other guy has in his perfume. You're not going to give them customer surveys showing that majority of customers think your cologne smells better than some other cologne. You're going to use imagery that's emotional, it's evocative, romantic places, maybe a person that the customer either wants to be or wants to be with. On the other hand, if you're selling industrial machinery, it's going to heavily skew toward that conscious marketing, because there are a whole list of things that product has to do to be at all functional in that use. It's got to have the right specifications. It's got to be available on time, and so on. So, but even there, you do have those non-conscious motivators that I talked about, such as job security is their risk. If buying from a new vendor, if I haven't bought from this vendor before, what if they don't deliver? What if the product doesn't do what they say it's going to do? For years, there was the old expression that nobody got fired for buying IBM, even though other companies may have had demonstrably better products. And that was an example of that kind of thinking in action. People didn't consciously say, well, I'm going to buy IBM because I won't get fired if it goes south. They just had a feeling of comfort knowing that IBM is the biggest brand. And even if this project has issues, they will fix it. And it's not going to reflect badly on me, where if I go with this other brand, and if it goes south, boy, everybody's going to be pointing at me saying, well, why did you do that? That's, those motivations, conscious and non-conscious, are really important.
I was
But
going to ask you actually, is it a part of that? Is it because we go a little bit lazy in our brains, meaning we're used to certain things and certain patterns and certain behaviors, and then we get to the point of it's like walking down the street. We walk down the street and we do it automatically, but our brains get a little bit lazy. But when we search for something else, it's sort of challenging in our minds to think of something new, rather than going with, as your analogy is going walking down to the grocery aisle and go, you get what you like and you get what you like. And then if something's new and interesting, go, well, I'm not too sure, or maybe it's a shiny object. Like for me, I like shiny objects every now and again. If I'm buying new software online, I go, oh, I might try that. And then I never use it. So how is that the right explanation, or
actually, you've partly summarized the words of Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winner in behavioral economics, who said that there is a law of least effort that applies to both cognitive behavior, thinking, and physical effort. That law of least effort applies. And to use your words, he says that people are basically lazy, and that comes to whether you're making them think or making them work physically. So, people don't want to be made to think. In fact, what system one has been called the default system. That's what our brains will use unless they're pushed into something else, or maybe they want to go into something else. Like if I'm going to buy a new camera, for example, I am probably going to be heavily into that system two analytical thinking process, because this is something that interests me. I understand it, and I want to read reviews. I want to read specifications and compare specifications. But that's something that I enjoy. If I'm buying a breakfast cereal or something, I don't want to be analyzing it at that level.
I was going to actually ask you. So how can sales professionals and sales companies now make the process a lot easier to buy? Because we know nowadays, like before they meet the salesperson, they've gone online, they've checked this out, they've checked the specifications out, they've checked the software out, or they've checked something else before they do all of that, and then they make the phone call, or someone makes a phone call. There's newsletters gone out, emails gone out, and so the influence is already there until they speak to someone on the phone or they see someone in the real world, but they've got all the knowledge there. So what can the salesperson or the salespeople do to make their job slightly easier? Because they still have to find the need. They still have to find everything else. How can they do that approach, which at the end of the day, we're still selling a product from A to B, but we want to do it in the quickest place of time, really.
Right. Well, okay. I think you make a really important point there, Jason. And actually, it's a great segue, because one of the elements in my persuasion slide is friction. If you've ever seen a kid get stuck partway down the slide because it's not slippery enough, that's friction. And to me, that is the most interesting element of the four in the slide, because it's something that is straightforward to address and often doesn't cost a lot of money. If you want to increase customer motivation, that can get expensive in a hurry. If you can increase customer motivation by offering cheaper prices, by offering free shipping, by adding more features into your product line, and so on and so on. But all of those things tend to cost quite a bit of money, where sometimes just making the process easier doesn't cost much. It may cost a little bit one time, but then that process keeps working for you. So that was why I decided to focus on that for my second book, Friction, that came out last year, and look at how effort changes the behavior of humans, both in various processes. A big part of it is in customer experience and sales. But I get into things like employee experience and so on too, which we won't probably get into today. But looking at the sales process, there are so many obstacles often in getting that sale closed, getting that customer on board. And salespeople over time have realized that eliminating that unnecessary friction yields more sales. If you've ever purchased a car in person at a car dealer, which I haven't done lately, thank goodness, but it's often not a very pleasant process. But one thing they do is they fill out all the forms for you. Then they never hand you a blank form and say, okay, Roger, I'm glad you've decided on this car. Now just, take a few minutes to fill in all these blanks for us, and then we will conclude the deal. The salesperson fills out everything except your signature.
That's right.
Because they know that they want to take that friction out of the process. And they've learned over time that this is the way to do it. But that seems like such an obvious thing, but it is not the practice everywhere. Many companies have difficult onboarding processes. We've had a great example here in the last 12 months. We are actually not speaking today via Zoom, but it has become the generic term, almost like Google it is for a web search or mobile search. We say, let's jump on a Zoom. And how do they get to this place? Because a year ago, you might have said, if you were asked to name the leading brand for video conferencing or video communications, you might say, well, probably Cisco's WebEx or maybe Microsoft Skype, huge brands. And then out of nowhere, it seemed Zoom came along and displaced them to become the default. Now, they were actually accelerating before the pandemic hit. That's something a lot of people don't realize, but they had already surpassed those big brands in market share starting in about 2016. They just took off like a rocket. And within a couple of years, we're actually doing more. They had more users than these other brands. But the key to their success, I think, lies in that company's mission statement, which was and is to make communications frictionless. Now, there's a couple of things to unpack there. First of all, that is the lowest friction mission statement that I've ever seen. If you've seen a typical mission statement from a company, it was written by a committee that took about 6 months to do it, and they've got everything in there but the kitchen sink. I tried to find their biggest competitor was WebEx, which is part of Cisco. I tried to find Cisco's mission statement, and a little bit of friction. I could not find it on either their website using their web search or even using Google search to search Cisco's website. But I did find it on a third-party site. And they talk about shaping the future of the internet and creating unprecedented value for customers, employees, investors, and ecosystem partners. Now, at the end of the day, what does that even mean? How does it, what kind of direction, if I'm an employee designing a new feature for the WebEx product, what kind of guidance does that give me? How do I deliver unprecedented value or shape the future of the internet? I'm just trying to figure out if I need a bigger button over here.
Yeah, exactly.
And with Zoom, it provides perfect clarity they were designed from day one to be super easy, no compromise.
I was going to say, is that the compound effect, like a tribal sort of effect that they've created? So there's an internal effect within the company. Everyone likes it, loves it, and they want to innovate with the products and services that they have, and everyone's compelled to do it, very much like the early days of Apple. Or the external effect now is like everyone is tribally following this as literally as a compound effect or of a friction effect, that they go, this number one thing they think of now is what you suggested is the platform I need to use. I can't actually think of anything else apart from Zoom. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And the same as Google and the same as sort of Amazon in a way. Like you don't think of anything else. Like you it's like calling a Hoover. You might have a Dyson, but it's a Hoover really.
Right. Yeah, not so much in the States, but yes, that's quite true. Hoover became the generic brand, just as Kleenex for facial tissues would be the technical term, became the default for that. And I think it was the reason this happened in the pandemic is because of the unprecedented number of people who suddenly had to connect remotely, and corporate IT departments knew that, okay, if we want the most robust, most secure with great support solution, maybe that's going to be Cisco and their WebEx product. Okay, industrial strength, they've got, a bazillion security engineers on it. But how many calls are we going to get from our people who are in their home trying to get up and running on it, and they're getting weird errors, or they can't make it work, or they got no video or something, where Zoom just works. And, people were ready to do it. You could tell them, hey, okay, just go to zoom.com, download the software, and you're up and running. Even getting into, people couldn't figure out how to get into meetings. So, Zoom initially bypassed some of the typical security features there. And ultimately, it created a risk for Zoom because they'd made it so frictionless that there were possibilities for abuse. In one case, I think there was a chance of, because they bypassed some security in Apple Mac computers, a hacker could theoretically take over your webcam without you realizing it. And they ended up having to push out an emergency fix for that. And of course, there were the Zoom bombing incidents where because they let people go into meetings just by clicking the link and suddenly, blam, you're in the meeting. Zoom bombers would click into meetings and then disrupt them with various things. So, eventually they had to add a few of these little friction elements in to keep everything safe. But that was after they got so widely adopted. And this is something, you mentioned Google and Amazon. Both of those are in my friction book. Zoom did not make it in there. They actually could have when I look back at the history, but they had not really begun their real ascendance to fame at that point. But both Google and Amazon have focused on minimizing customer effort. One of my favorite stories from Amazon is that back in 1998, they patented one-click ordering. Now, a lot of companies didn't think you could patent. So, I didn't think I saw that and said, you can't patent that. That's obvious. You click a button, you buy something using stored information. I could figure that one out. Yeah. But they did get issued a patent. And then Barnes & Noble, their big competitor at the time, implemented something similar on their site. These two companies got locked in a big legal battle, and millions of dollars and a couple of years in court later, Amazon prevailed. And what did they get for that? They got one tiny little click advantage, one little tap of the finger advantage over Barnes & Noble and all their other competitors. But they thought that was worth millions of dollars, where other people would say, in fact, even today, if you have a website or a mobile app and you say, this is kind of inconvenient. Customers have some extra clicks here, or they have to enter something here that maybe they don't have to enter with some keystrokes. The designer's likely to say, that's nothing. It's only a few clicks, only a few keystrokes. They don't realize that, just eliminating that one little click was worth millions to Jeff Bezos and Amazon. And about that same time, Steve Jobs and Apple were about to introduce iTunes. They saw that. They didn't screw around. They paid Amazon $1 million so they could have that one tiny little click advantage too.
And it makes
people underestimate the value of minimizing effort in any process.
Ironically, probably about 12 years ago, I was working for an online fax company. I was doing all the sort of the international business development, and we're pushing out news online emails. And we called it one click at that time. So you can subscribe to their services in one click, which made the whole process a lot easier. But thinking about easier and thinking about the future, where do you think all of this stuff is going? Because one click is awesome and frictionless is absolutely incredible. I know we've over the last 9-10 months, we've actually accelerated in our technology and all of that. But where do you think it's all going? How do you perceive the future to make it a lot easier?
Well, I think that there is going to be a continued emphasis on convenience. Up until now, relatively few people did delivery of their shopping, the grocery products, for example, or almost nobody did curbside pickup, where the store would pick your order for you and you'd pick it up. A lot of the big supermarket chains weren't even offering that, or they were kind of sort of beta testing it, but they weren't really pushing it. When the pandemic hit, those that were well into that process, all they had to do was scale. And a lot of people aren't going back to walking around a store pushing a shopping cart for an hour. They're finding, hey, I can save a lot of time. I can just do this online and bingo, pick it up. My order's done. Even things like payment, what I've seen even in checking out in a store like a supermarket or a large retailer, that has gotten much faster. It used to be that charge cards were an awkward process. They got better and better. Finally, oh, you only have to sign this little thing on our little pad here. You don't have to enter your zip code anymore. Now it's you just insert your card. You don't have to sign anything. You don't have to do anything. And now in many places, all you have to do is wave your card or wave your phone. And people are saying, well, hey, that's pretty good. I don't have to touch anything. If I can just wave my phone near the cash register, that's fast and it's safe. So, I think that, people have friction, but they don't see it. I've got a little prop here, Jason. I've got my friction goggles.
Oh, lovely.
The opening of Friction is a sort of little fable, a little story. The rest of the book is rather a normal business book, hopefully a good one, an interesting one. But the little fable introduces the concept of friction goggles that enable people to see friction where they didn't see it before. And I think a good example of that that's familiar to everybody now is the taxi space, where for years I thought taxis were a big effort saver. Much better than taking public transportation, much better than walking a long distance. And then suddenly Uber came along and wow, there is a lot of effort taking taxis. You got to go to stand by the street and you got to wave your arms to get them. You've got this stress if you called for a taxi to go to the airport and it's not there. And so like 2 minutes late and you're wondering, do they forget about me? Is he a block away? And then of course, when you go to pay, I don't know when I've traveled in Europe, you got these horrible credit card machines and things where the guy's got to reach under the seat and establish an internet connection and stuff to use your credit card. Or then they tell you it's busted because they don't want to pay the fees. And you've got to say, well, no cash, no cash. Uber eliminated all that. They eliminated so much friction that people flock to them. Their growth strategy was pretty simple. They made everything so easy that they signed up millions of customers and they knew the customers liked the experience so much that they would demand it, even when the taxis had political connections because they were paying for licenses to government agencies. The citizenry would say, hey, no, we hate taxis. We like Uber because it's a lot easier. And, but the point I'm making is that nobody saw that friction there before. I mean, if you didn't, you just accept it as part of the process. And I think even today, with all of this emphasis on convenience, we still see so much friction when we place orders, when we deal with companies. I mean, I've probably in the last few days in dealing with a major bank brand, had some really high friction experiences that took way more effort than they should have, just because their digital systems in that case weren't in place. I use a cable provider, or actually a satellite provider for my TV services, and trying to figure out how to get my services to function on my television was a really complicated process involving using a horrible little remote control where you've got to go up and down to spell things out on a keypad on the screen. Really in 2020, we've got to do this stuff. With my Fire Stick, I just grab the thing and talk into it and it understands and it finds what I'm looking for. But these, multi-billion-dollar cable providers and satellite TV providers, because in part they tend to be monopolies in the regions they serve, don't have this impetus to say, okay, we can eliminate a lot of effort from this if we just devote a little bit of time and money to it.
I was thinking a couple of years ago, I was involved with facial recognition technology, and the technology was installed within shopping centers, and then the technology was installed within the shop, like the retail stops. So it see your face, but it see your face at the buy-in checkout, but also connect with the EPOS tills. But then the way that we was thinking it was going is connect to Google and connect to the complete holistic experience. So you find out people's faces when they actually purchased, whether they're happy or whether they were sad. I'm fascinated by, because that's all to do with how you can remarket to people within the retail space. I'm intrigued about how marketeers, I know it's invading a little bit of privacy here, but it's all about creating that right experience of no waiting times. How can we create less queuing times by having maybe a separate experience while you're queuing, just to make the transaction less frictionless? So I'm sort of fascinated in that area. What's your take on that?
Well, yeah, I think there are many things that marketers can do to make the process both more effective and easier. You talk about occupying people while they're in queue. The master of that is Disney,
Yeah.
because in the various, Disney World and Land and such, there are inevitably queues because rides have fixed capacity and you've got thousands of people who want to get on those rides. And they have devoted literally billions of dollars to minimizing those queues or making the wait time more palatable by entertaining people during those, even by maybe concealing the length of the wait a little bit. Because if you've ever been to one of those places, the line doesn't look too long. You get around the corner and you realize, oh my God, there's another line even bigger here. But when they created their magic band system, which enables them to predict queues, enables them to steer people to different places around the park and improve their experience. In fact, what they found was that people were wasting a significant portion of their time just getting from place to place, crossing back and forth, trying to find someplace where there wasn't a long queue and so on. And they felt that, if they could reduce, an hour of walking around aimlessly, that would be a much, much, much better guest experience. They didn't need new attractions because that was their. I've had some conversations with John Padgett, who is the lead on that project. Now he's at Carnival working on their medallion system.
Oh, wow.
And the traditional Disney response was, well, people aren't real happy with their park experience. Let's build a gigantic new ride, big new Star Wars attraction or something, something that would really be an attention getter, be novel. But what they realized was that, people didn't want more stuff or new stuff necessarily because they weren't able to experience all the stuff that was there. But if you could just give them more entertainment for the time they spent, that would be better than some fancy new ride that people be queuing up for hours for. And so they did put $1 billion into Magic Band. It was, imagine being a large corporation and investing $1 billion in technology that basically nobody can see. It's you build a new Star Wars ride. Well, hey, that's big news. But putting it into basically, wiring and radio stuff and some, little, watch-like things that people are going to put on their wrist, that doesn't seem like it would be, a transformative experience. But in fact, they found that it did enable guests to have a much better experience. And even from getting from the airport, often we overlook those friction points, but when they looked at the total process, one of those friction points is you arrive at the Orlando airport and you've got to collect your luggage and then you've got to find transportation to your hotel and all this stuff. And they made that part of their process so that everything could happen more or less automatically. At Carnival, where John Padgett is working now, they're to develop their medallion system, which is a little bit like Magic Band, but only in a cruise environment with different purposes and different functions and such. They mocked up every aspect of the experience from the check-in at the port, which is always a zoo where you've got, you've got the process of offloading a few thousand guests and then immediately onboarding a few thousand guests and trying to make that not an unpleasant experience. And I've been cruising for, I don't know, 25 years or something now, at least, maybe more. And traditionally, that was that was sort of the worst part of the cruise, because you're in this hot cruise terminal, maybe not air conditioned. You've got long queues and people waiting, and you get filling out forms about whether you've had any flu-like symptoms or not. And you've got passports and tickets, and it's a mess. And so they started from mocking that up all the way back there, and indeed, again, possibly even getting from the airport to the crews, because they often handle the air transportation as well, and making all of that seamless and frictionless. So you never have to worry about any of this stuff, and any waits are minimized. But few companies really have the wherewithal or the desire to address the total process. But that's what it takes. You can't just say, well, we're going to focus on this little element of customer experience and improve that, if there's some other element of customer experience that is going to screw that up.
That's absolutely incredible. I like that. And they also made the Disney Hotel as well. They made that easy, as far as from the book I read quite recently, that the customer experience, like they might have not had the right decor in there and it might be a bit tacky, but this customer service is absolutely incredible. So every whim, you can just go a bottle of beer as an example, or you can go fruit juice and they'll be there for you. The decor might not be good, but they were saying that the experience is absolutely phenomenal. And if you want to make a phone call, they'll pass you a phone. So you don't have to think. So making everything slightly frictionless. So I know you got two wonderful books. I just want to ask you a question, which I normally ask every single guest. And hopefully it's a bit of a curveball. So if you had a magic power for 5 minutes, how would you use it and how do you utilize it? But you only have 5 minutes to use it.
Okay. Re-ask the question again, please, Jason.
So if you had a magic power or made you do something like fly or whatever, but you only have 5 minutes to do that with, how would you use that and how do you utilize that? But you only have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, that's I guess if it's truly magic, then you could make it powerful enough to accomplish what you needed to in 5 minutes. And I would have to say that it would be, since all I'm talking about these days, it seems, is making things easier. It would be a magic spray that would make the world frictionless. And in fact, I often begin my talks and workshops with a little example from my own experience, where years ago, in my younger days, I had a lock that was frozen. The key was stuck and wouldn't turn, but it was a specialty lock. I was the only one I had like it. So I took it to a locksmith and he looked at it, reached under the counter, grabbed a can of some stuff, gave it a shot, and it started working. And to me, it was like magic. And he wouldn't even take payment for fixing the lock. I was willing to pay him, but he sold me a can of this stuff that I'd never seen before. And then weirdly, a week later, I was at a Formula One race outside Toronto, and what did I see in the pit garage next to one of these really exotic race cars, but a can of the same stuff? And it really struck me. I said, holy cow, where's this been all my life? This is amazing. It's like a cure-all for anything. And so I rhetorically ask, wouldn't it be great, if there was a spray for your business like that would solve all your business problems and, get you more customers, more loyal customers, more engaged employees and team members. And, I then say there is not a magic spray like that, but talk about friction. But indeed, if I had that magic power, man, I would be just spraying that everywhere.
Awesome. Oh, well, that was a different answer from everyone else. I like that. That was really awesome. So. Some people have selfish ones and some people have unselfish ones, and that was really good. I really like that. So how can people find out a lot more about you? Because you got that we could actually talk for absolutely hours on your phenomenal subject, because it's absolutely intriguing. So how can people find out a little bit more about you and your podcast and everything else like that?
Right. Well, the best jumping off point is rogerdooley.com, where my podcast lives, and I've got links to my Forbes posts, my neuromarketing posts, and my social media profiles. I'm probably most active on Twitter and LinkedIn, but I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, and I'm pretty much at Roger Dooley, or simply Roger Dooley, at just about all of the normal social media channels.
Absolutely awesome. Roger, it's been absolutely phenomenal. I've really, really thoroughly enjoyed everything that you said. I wish I could ask you 1,000 more questions, because I'd say sort my website out, do this. I want to understand that, but we haven't got any time. I'd love to get you back on and quiz you more and ask you a lot more questions. So very much appreciative.
Well, my pleasure, Jason. It's been a fun conversation, and maybe next time we can dig into some particular topic in more depth.
Absolutely. So thank you once again. You're listening to the Global Sales Leader podcast. You can find this on Spotify, Apple, and this will be on YouTube, or for the people that actually like to see us good looking selves. And this will be available in the next couple of weeks. So look, for now, I wish you a happy Christmas and a wonderful New Year. From Dublin, Ireland to Texas. You are in Texas, is that right?
I am in Austin, Texas. Yes. Although for my surname, you might guess that my ancestors do come from Ireland.
Ah, wonderful. Absolutely. And
County Cork, to be precise.
Cork. Okay. So you'll have to come back and visit. So when you do, you'll be my guest.
Looking forward to that, Jason.
So thank you very much.